Today, my friends, I am so proud to announce that our union is now 800,000 members, coast to coast to coast. We are Canada's largest union. We are Canada's strongest union, and we will keep moving forward.
It was announced by SEIU that workers won their election with a 73% vote in favor of the union.
There was a handful of young guys in there that have other jobs that are union, and they helped a lot in talking with some of these other young guys that were unfamiliar with the unions.
Big voices figure at me said, let me tell you something. Not a goddamn man went down in that fucking zinc works that day. We could take whatever that hellhole could dish out.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is Chris Garlock, and you're listening to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, your sampler of some of the best new episodes across the network. I'm joined once again by fellow producers Harold Phillips and Patrick Dixon. I'm sorry I didn't let you jump in. And I'm joined once again by fellow producer Harold Phillips.
Hey.
And Patrick Dixon.
Hey as well.
Guys, do you see any themes this week?
There's a real focus on the work of unions, and it's kind of unions going about their business. Union staff, union organizers, union leaders are still going to work every day, and they're still representing their members, and they're still working to organize, and in some places they're still getting some pretty big wins too, both here in the US and in Canada as well, as you'll see from one of our shows.
Well, yeah, let's start off with Work Stoppage, which is a podcast that, quote, only talks about what can be done for the working class. They're here to demolish corporate ladders and chew bubblegum. And they don't even like bubblegum. Like Patrick said, this is about unions doing their business, and we've got a Michigan home care union win.
Welcome to your favorite labor podcast, everybody. The show is called Work Stoppage, and my name is John.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Lena. Well, going into our first story, which is not a disappointment, we're going to talk about an incredibly long-fought battle of some of the most exploited workers in the U.S. who have won their union in our state, John, Michigan.
Oh, boy.
Home health care workers were stripped of their legal collective bargaining rights in 2012, and Home Healthcare Workers United, a sector of SEIU, have been fighting to get those rights back ever since. And at the end of 2024, that actually finally happened. And this marked a necessary surge in organizing because while the number of home healthcare workers needed to get the legislation changed was significant, the goal was then to actually win the union recognition as state employees since they are paid via state Medicaid funds. As of January, the union announced that they were nearing the necessary amount of signed union cards to force an election to happen. And this was important because home health care workers were, at this point, stripped of their benefits and were basically just independent contractors, making just under $16 an hour in areas where the living wage is over $19 an hour, and a majority of them making around $13.53 an hour, which, I mean, we've talked about how much the exploitation of home healthcare workers is quintessentially American, and how low these incredibly hardworking people are paid. And to them not even have health care or any of these other benefits was a travesty.
I mean, I work with a few people who were previously home health care workers in Michigan, and to them, a bud tender job that is not a particularly good job is considered a very, very big upgrade. So you have to imagine that these folks are being put through the ringer all the time for basically peanuts.
Well, and yeah, I like connecting this with a story we talked about either last week or a couple weeks ago. You know, the federal government is looking to strip these folks of like even the right to get like minimum wage and like have a cap on their hours and anything like that. So like it just underlines how important it is to get union representation for workers like this. So the fact that you have like what was the number? It's like 35,000 or something.
It's 32,000, but you're spoiling my big number reveal.
Oh, no,
it's okay. Yeah, I mean, as alluded to by some of the ramp up to the hype of this, ultimately they were able to get the number of cards they needed and force the election. And as of October 9th, this past week, it was announced by SEIU that workers won their election with a 73% vote in favor of the union. And that means that this number, 32,000, that's a lot, home healthcare workers in Michigan now are part of SEIU and have their union, which is huge.
Yeah, that's enormous.
Rules.
Yeah, no, it really is. And Erica LaFontaine, a caregiver in Jackson, Michigan, said in a UNI Global Union article, quote, "Winning our union sends a clear message that home healthcare workers will no longer work in the shadows of our communities. We know our worth, we won't be divided, and we're part of a movement of working people across this country demanding good union jobs so we can take care of ourselves, our own families, and our communities," end quote. And that comprehensive list, I thought, was just like showing how well connected these home healthcare workers are, because we know this about healthcare workers in general, that they are deeply intertwined with the communities that they serve because they are constantly caring for people. And it's no surprise that these home healthcare workers know their value to society.
Yeah, and there's home healthcare workers in every neighborhood in the country. Every community needs them, unless you're like 3 people, I guess. And even then.
Yeah. So now the workers will be bargaining with the state for, more jobs in the industry and better pay, benefits, and just general respect on the job. And so more power to them, and we can't wait to see the victories that they get. As always, labor peace is not in our interest, and solidarity forever.
Solidarity.
So, Harold, there were quite a number of episodes this week about CUPE and what's going on in Canada, and we chose RadioLabour Canada, and we got a speech from Mark Hancock, who's the president of CUPE, which I found pretty, I don't know, stirring, exciting, choose your adjective. Can you tell us what was going on there?
Yeah, the Canadian Union of Public Employees re-elected Mark Hancock and announced growth to 800,000 members, as Hancock blasted Canada's new right-wing government and vowed to fight back to work orders and the cost of living crisis.
This is Solidarity News on RadioLabour.
This is a RadioLabour Canada report recorded on Friday, October 10th, 2025. I'm Mark Belanger.
In a world so polarized and angry, worker solidarity bridges what divides us. In the end, solidarity is another word for humanity, my friends. And when we practice solidarity, we cannot be stopped.
That is Mark Hancock, the president of the Canadian Union of Public Employees. CUPE is Canada's largest union with members in every city and town in the country. Mr. Hancock, who was elected CUPE's 6th national president in 2015, was re-elected this week as 3,000 people attended the union's national convention in Toronto.
We have a new right-wing prime minister and an even more right-wing official opposition in Parliament. Mark Carney was carried into office on a promise to stand up for Canada. But he has done nothing but bow down to Trump and to erode the things that make us proudest to be Canadian ever since taking power. On his first day in office, he ripped up Canada's climate plan and cut taxes for millionaires and billionaires while leaving working people behind. He abandoned Canada's countermeasures against Donald Trump. And he is promising the biggest increase in military spending since the Second World War, being funded by cuts to jobs and cuts to public services. As a union, a decade ago when I was first elected national president, we stood at 633,000 strong. And in the years since, we've organized like never before to grow our union and to grow our movement. And today, my friends, I am so proud to announce that our union is now 800,000 members. coast to coast to coast. We are Canada's largest union. We are Canada's strongest union, and we will keep moving forward. My friends, $1 million is just around the corner. We're fighting the cost of living crisis and helping our members get ahead. Because if governments won't act to make life more affordable for workers, you can be damn sure that we're going to force them to. Workers in Canada need CUPE. That's never been clearer to me than it was just a few weeks ago. When I was standing on a picket line at Pearson Airport with Candace and hundreds of incredible Air Canada flight attendants on strike for the first time in 40 years. After 9 months at the bargaining table, fighting to end poverty wages, they were getting nowhere. So those courageous workers took a stand to say loud and clear, unpaid work won't fly. And what did our government do in that moment? Did they put pressure on the company that has raked in billions of profits to deal fairly with our members? No. Did they promise to end unpaid work, which the company has inflicted on our members for decades? No. After just 11 hours on the picket line, Mark Carney's government stepped in to end our strike and to order our members back to work. And let's be clear about one more thing. We were not breaking the law. We were standing up for the Charter. We were standing up for the constitutional right of every single worker in this country to go on strike, to fight for a better life. Let's stand together and let's show this country what union solidarity looks like. We are Canada's strongest union, my friends. Together we're unstoppable, and together we'll make history.
And that's it. Labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about solidarity.
And if you want to know more about the CUPE convention, check out the Canadian Union Podcast for Employees. CUPE. Get it? CUPE.
All right, Patrick, you have got some cuts from, Machinists 141 Connections.
They're talking this week about organizing ramp agents at JetBlue. They explore why they need a union, why they need a union contract. And beyond that, they really kind of go into some of the details of how they think about an organizing campaign and the steps involved there.
Cool. And do we know, I know obviously Machinist 141 Connections is produced by Machinist Local 141. I actually don't know where they're out of. Does anybody, Harold, do you know?
They are actually, their headquarters is in Burlingame, California. So I'm going to say, yeah, they're based in California, Chris.
My guess is it must be a pretty good sized local because they actually have a media department, and most unions are lucky to have somebody who does media, and they certainly don't have a department. So good for them. Good for them.
But I am going to say, Patrick said at the outset that this show is all about unions doing their business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, when they think about what union business is, they think about strikes, right?
Yes, right.
This is the other side of that. Organizing, actually helping workers come together to make a better workplace. So it's really great that we could include this show.
141 Machinist Connections is a podcast brought to you by District 141 of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, AFL-CIO. Listen on Spotify and Amazon Podcasts. Peace and welcome back to another episode of the Connections Podcast, brought to you by District 141 of the IAM Union. One of the co-hosts here, Lou Gilmore from the Media and Communications team. We're back with another jam-packed episode focused on our organizing initiatives, particularly with this current JetBlue organizing campaign. I have a room full of guests this time. Joining us once again, we've heard from before, Brother Andrew Garmison. We also have Brother Charlie Hines and Brother Richard Jarvis. So, Brother Jarvis, talk to me. As a JetBlue employee who is helping out with this organizing drive, that would make you what we call a part of the inside committee. So, talk to me. What inspired your passion to make that commitment to be an inside committee person for an organizing drive? And I would say for several, because we've been in this organizing drive with JetBlue for quite some time. And so, for someone to be involved and have that type of tenacity, just what inspires you to step up to that plate?
I was a union member before in my previous job, and the union obviously is much better than being non-union. It gives you protection that you could only know about if you were in a union. And in my 16 years, I've seen a wide variety of things go on at JetBlue that, had there been union protection, people wouldn't have been fired or treated the way they were. And the story just goes on. And the company can come in at any time and say anything they want, no matter how foolish it sounds, and everybody has to just accept it. When the company would tell you that there was no money for a pay raise in 2017, and the company was making more profit than it ever made. Just things like that. It just boils my blood, and that's why I got involved.
I definitely understand that, brother. Definitely understand that. So within that, helping to organize this campaign with JetBlue, what are some of the tools that you have utilized in order to reach the audience that you need to reach?
It's a tough audience because it's young and it's constantly overturning, but there was a handful of young guys in there that have other jobs that are union, and they helped a lot in talking with some of these other young guys that were unfamiliar with the unions. And one of our major problems is the turnover rate is very high in Boston, but we're countering that with getting some young people on board, and they're able to talk to the newer, younger people. And unfortunately, some of the older people, they just get complacent. And they're like, well, I've been here 15, 18 years. Nobody bothers me. I'm fine. But the company just changes things at will. And then they find out about it months later, and they're like, well, I didn't vote on that. And I'm like, that's because we're not a union. You have no say in the matter.
So with that, we're going to be IAM out. Peace.
So now for our last clip, I think you guys are kind of familiar with this show, right?
Patrick, we should probably just turn on the recorder when we get in the car for these road trips, right? This was, I think it was almost 2 months ago, right, when we went out to Wheeling for the second time to cover the conference they do there, and we look for labor history. And I think you found this, actually. I think I missed this. The Donora Smog Museum, right?
This is a fascinating museum. We had a great guide in Brian Charlton, and I've really been sharing this episode around, and I'm normally kind of reluctant to self-promote the show that I work on in the weekly, but this is one of my favorite episodes we've done of Labor History Today.
And I just say it has a great title, the 1948 Donora Death Smog. On our drive to Wheeling last month for the annual Reuther Labor History Symposium, producer Patrick Dixon and I did what we always do, scan the route for labor history hiding in plain sight. That hunt led us to the Donora Smog Museum in Donora, Pennsylvania, where a 1948 disaster changed how the country thinks about work, health, and the environment. We rolled tape as soon as we walked in and were greeted by Brian Charlton.
You're asking me a question, or I'm starting, or...
Yeah.
Oh, I am? I'm starting? Okay. Let me turn off some of these fans.
Thank you. So the question is, I was talking to another friend who just called me on the way. He said he thought I was pulling his leg. He does not believe that there was a smog museum. So can you tell folks, what is a smog museum?
In 1948 in Donora, we had a what we call the smog disaster. There was a temperature inversion, and the effluent, the smoke, the toxins from the mill got trapped here in the valley. There had been a similar incident that had happened in the Meuse Valley in Belgium in 1930, but this is 1948, October of 1948. Temperature inversion. They are using the Belgian method to smelt zinc. This, at the time, is the largest zinc smelter in the world. And they are running 24/7, 365 days a year, never shutting down. This is basically where the environmental movement kind of says that the United States has drawn the line in the sand. Industry cannot just indiscriminately put anything out into the atmosphere without accounting for it. And that's what happened in the smog disaster, with the temperature inversion lasting longer than normal. It's lasting about 6 days, when normally it should last between 24 and 48 hours. So it's lasting 6 days. The toxins begin to build up, and then people who already have some type of respiratory problem, pre-existing condition, they are the ones who are being affected first. But everyone is sick to some degree. They get something that the zinc workers call the zinc shakes. I've done a lot of study, a lot of research. I've interviewed a lot of these guys, and we've come to some very interesting conclusions about them. And the zinc shakes is one of them, one of the things that they accepted.
So we want to hear, I think, more about what are other stories that you heard from the workers when you were interviewing them.
One of the zinc workers had, there was rumor that Ping Alvarez, and he, of course, was Spanish. Joseph was his actual name, but he's Ping. He was about 5'3", weighed probably about 120 pounds, but when you shook his hand, he crushed your hand. And it was like, whoa, he was probably in his 80s. And I asked Ping in an interview, how many guys got sick at the zinc works that day? And Ping rears up in his chair, and he points his finger at me. Are we allowed to swear? Yeah. Ping points his finger at me. He said, let me tell you something. Not a goddamn man went down in that fucking zinc works that day. We could take whatever that hellhole could dish out. And that is the attitude that they're going in with. Consequently, that is going to hurt them in the long run, because when the investigations start afterwards, they are going to carry that attitude over. We're not saying anything. Were you sick during the zinc works? Even if you were sick during the zinc works, you weren't sick during the disaster. You weren't sick during the disaster because you are going to protect that mill at all cost. And that's the attitude that you're working with those guys afterwards. They think that they can beat the toxins in that zinc ore. Only they don't know that they can't.
Brian Charlton at the Donora Smog Museum in Donora, that's Donora, Pennsylvania. They're open Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. or by appointment. All right. So that was clips from just 5 of the shows released on the Labor Radio Podcast Network. Here is a rundown of a half a dozen more that are worth checking out. Yes, it is our Shows You Should Know segment, sort of divvied up randomly. Let's go to Harold. You've got a couple of picks. What do you got?
Yeah, I do. You know, there were some great shows released this week, and not all of them could fit into the weekly with full clips. But be sure that you check out Labor Force, that looks at the federal shutdown's fallout for working families, Kaiser Permanente healthcare workers preparing for their historic walkout, which by the time you listen to this might be over, and California's first in the nation law letting rideshare drivers unionize, and even more. Also, over on the Working People podcast, Max talks to Tom Alter about free speech, higher education, and labor solidarity as Texas State University moves to fire him based on a doctored video, if you can believe that. And the Labor Notes podcast focused this week on Wells Fargo workers organizing in one of labor's toughest terrains. Boy, there was some alliteration in that. As they work to unionize a major U.S. bank.
I actually just read that story in Labor Notes, and interesting fact. I guess I should have known this, but bank workers in other industrialized nations are mostly unionized, but actually in this country, I think it's like maybe 1% of them are organized. So interesting tidbit. All right, Patrick, what have you got?
While we're talking about banks and the economy, Heartland Labor Forum spoke with economist Heather Long about the US's top-heavy economy and slides into labor history of Marcello Benciveni, who discusses Arturo Giovannitti and immigrant radical culture. Who gave me this one?
I should have taken it because we actually stole that for my show, and both me and Elise had to really practice Arturo Giovannitti. What is so hard about that?
No, but I actually found this one really interesting because we know a lot of names from labor history like Mother Jones or Samuel Gompers. Arturo Giovannitti, that's not a name that a lot of people know. So I'm really glad that they have that segment on the Heartland Labor Forum.
And by the way, that whole story is about free speech, which again, current reference, yes, it is. So anyway, back to you, Patrick.
Let's stay with labour history for a minute then, and we're going to go to Tales from the Reuther Archive. Its latest episode looks at the National Labour Relations Board's post-war charity exemption and how it shut out non-profit workers. Then it takes a look at the 1976 reversal that reopened organising at non-profits.
Thank God, because those workers need unions.
Is it back to me? Oh, you're giving me all the funny names today. When people think about the United Mine Workers of America, they often think about coal mining, but TAUC, the TAUC, I thought it was called TAUC the TAUC, but when that's the Association of Union Constructors, introduces us to the former coal mining town of Homer City, Pennsylvania, which is transforming itself with a new AI-powered natural gas facility. So it looks like we have another stopping point for the next time we're traveling through Pennsylvania.
Definitely. And then if you want to talk about recent labor history, we just lost a towering figure with the death of former United Steelworkers president Leo Gerard, and my Labor Heritage Power Hour shared memories of Leo, which were originally recorded for the Labor Exchange. I steal shamelessly from my fellow network members, and actually, I'm not embarrassed at all about it. I love that we have so much great content. And frankly, anytime there's any labor history by any other shows, we go ahead and pick that up.
Yeah, but you also had other stuff on the Power Hour, didn't you, Chris?
Yes, Baristas versus Billionaires, which is a brand new film about the Starbucks workers united organizing. One of last count, I think there were at least 3 films about the Starbucks organizing that I am aware of. And then we also had United Mine Workers of America President Cecil Roberts' fabulous speech from Matewan, which honestly, that piece alone, if it wasn't 26 minutes long and I have a 55-minute show, we would have just run for the show. It is, I could listen to Cecil all day long. That's just me.
And, you know, Patrick's thing about coal mining kind of goes at the end of that because Cecil Roberts, United Mine Workers, that was kind of what.
It's all connected, boys and girls. Yeah. It is all connected.
Just have to dig around to find the connections.
Oh, no. Seriously? And that's a wrap for this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, your roundup from more than 200 labor radio shows in the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
If you want to find links to some of the shows that you heard here or heard mentioned here, or any of the over 200 labor radio shows and podcasts in the network, head to laborradionetwork.org. And be sure to follow #LaborRadioPod on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for the moment.
I was on Twitter today. Oh man, it just gets worse and worse. But we're not going to talk about that. Patrick.
Well, I'm just going to say, if you want to follow us on Blue Sky, that's as good an excuse as any to leave Twitter.
All right, tell us what you think about the show. Whether you liked it, hated it, whatever. info@laborradionetwork.org. You can also support the network with union-made t-shirts. We have 2 colours, both black and grey. All sizes are available, also at laborradionetwork.org.
And hey, let us know what you think about this new format at info@laborradionetwork.org. We'd love to hear what you think. Oh, I guess that's me, isn't it?
The professional actor can't see a fucking cue.
Well, this seems like a good time to remind you that this podcast was recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement. And hey, for the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly,
Oh, splendid. I'm Patrick Dixon and I edited the show.
I'm Harold Phillips, and I pulled together the social media.
And I'm Chris Garlick. I produce the show.
Stay active.
That was my line.
Come on, guys. Can't you read the script?
Stay active.
Stay tuned to your local labor radio or podcast show.
We'll see you next week, everybody.